Hi, my name's Tim Hanai, and I am one of the co-founders of winebusinesseducation.com. And I'm going to take you through a look at what really goes into the cost of goods of a bottle of wine today, the variables and how the pricing workups are really done. There are a lot of different takes on this, some of which are pretty good and others which are just so off base it's kind of ridiculous. So hope you'll enjoy this video and take a look at what really goes into the cost of goods. I'm going to disappear and make this full screen now. And this is our site at winebusinesseducation.com. We offer a number of financial workbooks that we provide to the wine industry. And what we're going to look at today is cost of goods. So I'm going to open a new workbook. And basically, the information you put into this workbook are the name of the wine. And let's do a red blend. And we're going to do a $25 red blend. You can do case studies with this program. You can do forecasting and workup. My name is Tim, and the date today is the 28th of December, and this is Chateau Timbo Winery, just for kicks. All right, so on this first page, you're basically putting in how many cases of the product are we going to make, and I'm just going to do this at 10,000 cases. And then we're going to need to understand FOB pricing, and FOB is the cost the winery sells the wine to a distributor, to an importer in another country. But it's also best practice to use it as the price that you would transfer the goods to your tasting room or your wine club. The reason for that is so that you can separate the fiscal aspects of production, and then in effect the wine club or tasting room buys the wine just like a retailer would, and so on and so forth. So since we're shooting for $25, I know that I can put in 135 bucks here and hit tab, and then notice that that'll get me to a $24.94 estimated FOB selling price. Now there's a back-end calculation for this, but fundamentally, if you're selling the wine through the three-tier system for $135, then in the US, this would be an approximation of the shelf price and provide pricing guidelines for your tasting room, your wine club, and other applications, okay? Now, as we go through this, you're going to notice along the top here, we're going to start populating what's going into our cost of goods per case, our gross margin per case, total gross margin, and as a percentage. And if we're making 10,000 cases that we're selling for $135, our gross margin is, that would be the total sales from the product would be $1,350,000, okay? Now we're gonna go to grape costs. This is a whole area of study unto itself. And again, there's so much misinformation about grape prices and availability and so forth. But with this program, I can go down and I can select, and we're just going to make a standard sort of Meritage Cabernet blend, Cabernet Sauvignon, and then I can add more grapes. If I'm doing a single vineyard or a single variety like Pinot Noir, I can have different blocks, or I might be purchasing from different growers, those kind of things. So it's not only for the various grape varieties, but this is also used for single varieties where you're purchasing grapes at different prices from different growers. All right, we're gonna put some Cabernet Franc in here and a little Petit Verdot, okay? And as we add these grapes, you'll see on the right, these are some very gross estimations of what you might find from a super ultra premium vineyard source and thinking then in concentric circles outward to a state level. And it's very interesting to look at crop reports and crop pricing. 2 years ago, the lowest price for Napa Cabernet fruit was $1,000 a ton, and the highest price was $50,000 a ton. And as the supply and demand has changed around the world, prices have come down significantly. The lowest price paid year before last for Cabernet was $150 a ton. Now, that is speculative buying. That is something that you really can't build a brand in. But let's say that just as a basis, our cost per ton is going to be about $2,500. Then we're going to put in what percentage of the blend is going to be Cabernet. So let's say that that's going to be 40%. Let's say that Merlot perhaps was a bit depressed at this time, and we decide that we're going to put the Merlot in at 30%. And as we go along, you'll see what it's doing is it's adding to our total, which must be 100%, but it's also breaking down the allocated cost of the wine in the blend, okay? So as we go along then, we can, Cabernet Franc has been in pretty high demand, so let's say that that's up there, but we're gonna use 10% of that. And that we've got a friend with some Petit Verdot, and they're going to sell us that for $2,000 a ton. And then we're going to use that to make up the balance of the blend, okay? Remember, blending in the real world is not some artsy-fartsy, oh, a little soupçon of this and blah, blah, blah. It's actually business decisions. And as we go along, if we had any notes we wanted to put about the grape source, is it our own estate? What block is it from? What's the grower that we're getting? We can fill all this out. But what we've got now here then is a breakdown, and you'll see that it gives us the total cost per ton based on this. If we wanted to go in and make some changes to it, maybe we decided at the final blend we wanted 50% of Cabernet Sauvignon, and we only wanted 10% of the Petit Verdot or less or more or whatever. It goes in and makes the changes as you work. All right, now we go into production and winemaking. A critical number, well, before we get to it, a lot of times the winery might have existing material that's already fermented, or it might supplement its production with bulk wine. Remember, bulk wine does not mean cheap wine. People are amazed at the unbelievable quality of material or finished wine that's available in the bulk wine market. We can accommodate that, but we're going to do this as 100% production. And then what our next number we need to know is, historically making this wine, or as a forecast, how many cases are we going to squeeze out of a ton of grapes? This could be as low as 50 cases per ton. It could be as high as the mid 60s and even 70, but we use a sort of a standard that a good press, a modern press, can extract 62 cases roughly from a ton of grapes. Now, as soon as we get this number in, notice it's telling us how many tons we need, what's the total cost of the grapes for our budgeting. This is what we'll have to write a check for. And then a reference cost, how much of this wine goes into the cost of the finished wine. So the cost of grapes in relationship to 1 case of finished wines. All right, in the production area, there are a lot of optional fields, but the big question is, what's the general production cost to ferment, to produce this wine? This is excluding aging and cellaring. So this can be worked out in a number of ways with a winery bookkeeper or finance advisor or so forth. but let's say that we're going to use a $1,500 a ton number. This would also be a number that you would look for from your custom crush facility if you're making a wine in that process. But then also remember that this would be general. Maybe the vintage is a little messy and you've got to do some extra sorting, or you want to do must chilling because it's hot and you need to get the temperature of the grapes and the must down. Maybe you've got extra equipment that you might employ and so forth. So all of these options are also in here, and we're just going to use one number. The range for the production of a ton of a wine like this can range anywhere from $300 to $3,000. So remember, these are just general benchmark costs that I'm using, and there is no set price, and that is important to know. So that means our total production cost per ton is 1,500 bucks. And then this was what it would equate to. And then that means that our total per case cost of production is $24.19. Now, if we had bulk wine in here, we would enter the cost of the bulk wine material, which let's say might cost us $25. And that maybe that because of the vintage, or we had some extra material lying around, that we're going to put in like 5% of that, okay? Now what it's going to do is then make accommodations down here. We need less grapes because we're using some finished material and so forth, and then it's going to break out that costing for us as well. At the bottom, here's our cost, including grapes production and any bulk wine, fermented wine, but we can't forget about state, federal excise taxes. We got a link here to the tax table. And so basically, with our production level in this type of wine, we've got $1.07 per gallon federal tax that we need to pay. And there we go. And you can see now at the top, we're at $60 cost of goods on a per case basis. Our gross margin is very high because we haven't added, we've still got a lot of work to go. And this is our margin, and then margin as a percentage, okay? Now, when we go to the next page, we get into the barrel program. People often have a very incomplete and very topical understanding of barrel costs. So this program really goes through a lot of the financial considerations. So let's say that we're going to incorporate some new French oak into this. And the percentage of the wine that we're going to put into the new oak is 20% of the wine, okay? And then over here, what we're going to do is we're going to have a used program, and it could be French, it could be American, it could be a combo. And so let's say that this is going to be a combo, and we're going to put the other 80% of the wine into this. The new French oak, we're going to leave the wine in there for 8 months, and then we're going to put 10 months into the more neutral oak that we're going to use over time. Okay, so it's now telling us how many gallons, the equivalent number of cases, etc. The next thing is, what's the laid-in cost of a new barrel of French oak, and it's anywhere from 1,300 plus or minus a lot. And then we also have a salvage value. This is very important, understanding the true cost of the barrel. You can sell a good barrel after one use, or sell it back to yourself, depending on how you're doing your financing, for, let's say, $900. And then what we're going to do is we're going to charge the $900 for the used program, okay? And it'll basically have virtually no value at the end. We'll call it 50 bucks. We can sell it to somebody to use for planters in their garden. Barrel capacity can range anywhere from 55 gallons to 60 to 3,000 to 25. So you put in the size of the barrels, and then How many years are you going to use the barrel? New oak you can only use once. And for this other, we're going to have a program of 6 years. All right, a variable character and use. Then it's going to break down what's the cost of barrel per month, how many barrels would we require, very important number, the net cost of the barrels that includes deducting the salvage value, and then you get a cost of barrels per bottle. But notice that our small amount of new oak is very expensive versus 6 years in this. Something that people need to be aware of if you're studying at a high level or if you're in production is there's an evaporation rate, and it can be very expensive. Under good conditions, a 3% evaporation rate is not uncommon, and that's fairly manageable. And if we've got new barrels, it might actually be a little bit higher, because a new barrel, you'll condition it and you'll soak it with water and solutions and whatever, but it tends to take a little bit of time to expand, to fill the grains, and so forth. This is also why it's so important to have the barrel storage conditions correctly. Evaporation loss can be 10% if the humidity and temperature and conditions aren't maintained correctly. Now, since we're losing this amount of wine per year, we need to replace it, and then let's use the $25 per gallon number in both instances for this. And there we go. And this is the cost of the evaporation loss per month, and it can be really significant. And the topping costs for the replacement, breaking it down, and then over here, we've got the cost of wine, including barrel aging. So this is our running cost of the material, meaning the fermented barrel-aged wine, and this is the total for our 10,000 cases. All right, so our next tab then is aging, cellaring, and storage that's not in barrel. And for a red wine, typically you're going to ferment it. You may let it settle in stainless steel. You're then going to go into barrel and so on, but you do have to accommodate a number of months of the wine being aged in uprights or stainless steel or something during the process, okay? Oak alternatives, chips, blocks, etc., like that can be accommodated in a lump sum or any additional aging related costs. That could be the cost of your concrete eggs, or different things that you're doing that are exceptional for this wine. All right. And don't forget, with oak alternatives, chips and blocks and solutions, the technology is unbelievably evolving, and the quality is becoming almost imperceptible. It used to be very easy to tell wines that were using oak alternatives, but combination of the way that it's applied and with things like microoxygenation during fermentation, et cetera, as the costs of the storage and the aging increase, this is more and more common, and you may push back at it, oh, that's not the way to do it, but you'd be amazed how many wines are doing this that are at the high end, and you have no clue that they're doing it. All right, this is a section for any additional cellar treatments or whatever that after, up to this point of production, this would again be exceptional costs for stabilization and clarification, any specialized filtration, treatment and supplies, and so forth, okay? Monthly storage of case goods. This can, you've got to have a bonded warehouse that the wines are going into. Once it goes into the bottles and boxes, you're going to need to store it for some period of time. It might be a year that you do that. If you're doing custom crush or using a facility, sometimes they charge in and out fees. So This would even be for barrels. They charge you to bring the wines in and out, and that can be a surprise to many. And then after the wines are released and the taxes are paid, if you're going to sell this wine over a course of a year, you better figure that you're gonna have, like, you know, temperature controlled storage in a bonded facility or your own warehouse, but either way it's gonna cost you. And if you deplete the wine over the course of the year, then you can roughly guesstimate that's gonna be a 6-month turnaround for that piece of this, okay? So now we've got aging and cellaring cost per case. We've got total cost of aging and cellaring, blah, blah, blah. And there's our running total. Packaging costs. I'm going to jump back to this for a second. This is crazy. I mean, there are people that are estimating a cork costs $1.50 and whatever. So I mean, it's literally just ridiculous. You know, the estimates and the kind of information people are out there. So there's 2 ways to do the work up here. If I know what my total cost is of the bottles, case closures, labels, etc., you know, it could be $24, it could be $50. I can put it in there. But typically, if you go out and look, you'll find, you know, bottles costing $1.50, and if they're special batons or heavy glass or whatever, that can certainly be a lot more. And if you're a large facility, it can be a lot less. And the cost of the bottles typically include the case that it comes in. You can put in corks and screw caps and closures, and we'll just do a 25 cents for our cork and 15 cents for that. Label per bottle, but also accommodating overages and everything. Let's throw in that at $1. And we're going to put some graphics on our box, but those have to be printed, and maybe it costs us 50 cents to get our winery logo and make it colorful so it stands out in the warehouse or on the store floor or in our tasting room. And then accommodation for any additional packaging, such as wooden boxes, tissue wrap, etc. All right, now we've got the wine and we're ready we've got the packaging ready. We'll need to get a certificate of label approval. We'll have to make redesign of the label for the vintage and those kind of things. That may be $1,000, it may be a lot more, but those are what you need to look at. Then the bottling and filling costs per case. This is whether you own your own bottling line and machinery, or if you use a mobile bottler that comes and does it, or if you take the wine in bulk and send it to a place to be bottled. You've got a bottling and filling cost. And let's say that we're just going to guesstimate that at $4.50 a bottle. If you do a changeover, if you're trying to be efficient and you've got your bottling line running, if you're changing to another wine or something, you might have a changeover fee, and sometimes they can be really significant. But this means you're changing over from one bottling criteria. Say we're running 750s and then we want to run some magnums or something like that. You'll have to pay additional to change over to the right equipment to do that. Then there's again a catch-all if there's anything that you didn't count on, and all of a sudden we've got a cost of finished goods. Now, an important distinction: you've got cost of material, and that's the wine fermented in a liquid form, but it's not in the bottle yet. So that's cost of material. Cost of finished goods is the material plus all the packaging and labeling and all that kind of stuff. A third very important thing for the bottom line of the winery is a fully allocated cost of goods, which would then include all of your labor and your overhead and marketing and sales and so forth. So we're just looking at what goes into the specific cost of goods, and as we discuss in the wine business courses and with clients and so on, this gross margin then is if you will, this is your reserve, this is your bank, so that you can then budget the labor, the overhead, and everything accordingly, okay? So this does not include all of those additional allocated costs, all right? And then, bingo kajingo, you get, this will take just a second to load up here, a complete breakdown that your cost of goods is 120 bucks a case, your margin's 14.57 per case, total gross margin 10,000 cases, and then your gross margin as a percent. And I'll tell you right now, if you're selling a $25 red blend, this is way, way low. You need to be somewhere around a 40% margin. So now you can look and say, what, in terms of the grapes, the production and so forth, here's a percent of total, here's a per case dollar amount, and then here are the total costs in margin. Remember at the very beginning in Project Info, we put into the formula an FOB price, and then this is the price calculation that it provides to give you an estimate of retail selling price. Now we've got an entire calculator for a very, very detailed workup, but again, this is just a guideline that we can use. So how do we make it profitable? Ooh, okay. Holy moly, we really loved the grapes that we were getting, but maybe we better do some negotiation and or remix the blend. And again, this is a reality of it. It's not this people in some, you know, with classic music playing and candlelight blending wine. It's like, how do we maximize our margin so that we can, you know, make payroll, so that we can pay our bills, that we can offer sales incentives, that we can give the winemaking team bonuses, all these kind of things. So for a $25 red blend to be profitable, we're going to need to significantly get our grape prices down. We're going to have to really look at the forecast and work with growers so that we can start to then go in and let's say that we can then successfully renegotiate or rethink, you know, who we're dealing with, and then find a way that we can start to get this wine into profitability, okay? And so now as I do this, when I hit save down here, it's going to do a complete reformulation of everything. And notice that we were able to increase our gross margin by about 60%. So we're starting to get on track to where we need to be. And then we can look at our production. Maybe we can squeeze a couple more grapes out, and you can see that's there are a couple more cases. This is the value of a really good press. And if you're looking at ice wine, you're looking, you know, for botrytis and ice wines, you're only getting, you know, like 28 or 30 cases per ton. A new appreciation for that. You may have to renegotiate on your production. Where can you save money or create efficiencies to bring that cost down? All right. Maybe you're in a position that there's some really good bulk wine out there, and that it's pennies on the dollar, and you find you can get $15 a gallon bulk wine of really good quality, somebody's overage and so forth, and then you're going to, I'm using the stepper here, you're going to increase the percentage of how much that is. Now we're over double our margin here now. We can go into our barrel costs and say, well, you know, this French oak is pretty nice, but what if we only put 10% into that? And what if we put 80% into that? Okay. And then we can go down through that. Then we go over to our aging and storing and say, okay, well, we want a little. So what if, what if we spent $500 to give it a little bit of new oak character and didn't tell anyone? And that's happening in wineries you can't even imagine, okay? And so forth. All right. So as we do this, then we can go back systematically and find out what changes do we need to make. We're going to have to relook at our glass supplier. If we can save a few pennies here on the corks, how can we print the labels more efficiently and lower that cost? And this then allows you, again, to start to get into the level that's necessary to become profitable for this wine. So again, at the end of it, here's our new FOB, and has all the production numbers and the full breakdown. Now, what's also really cool about this program is if I've done this as a forecast for the 2020 vintage, at the end of the year or early next year, I sit down with my accountant and start to plug in the real numbers, all right? Once I've got this in, then I can go down and clone this and name it 2021 forecast. So I can take the basis of all my costs. When I clone it, it's a brand new workbook. I save it as $25 blend 2021. And I can start looking, okay, what's the grape forecast looking like? Are prices going to be going up, going down? How can I start preparing to bring my barrel costs down? What can we do with the packaging and the bottling and so on and so forth? So I hope you enjoy this kind of frantic look at wine profitability and really what goes into the details of the cost of goods. And then later I'll be doing some things like the wine pricing calculator, a vineyard profit and loss and cash flow workbook, which is very detailed and very cool. So there are also templates. I'll provide you with a link to our tutorial so you can actually see templates on our program. I'm sorry, let me go back a step here and go back into my program. We've got a tutorial page, so you can go to winebusinesseducation.com/FAQs. I'm going to move myself over here, and you can see what the vineyard cash flow, cost of goods, our pricing calculator, all the details and the decisions that go into each part of it. So thanks very much. Enjoy.